You may not be ready to admit it, but Black Ops 4 was the best Call of Duty we've ever had.
This is the game I want to play! This is the game!
Now, if you saw the thumbnail and clicked on the video immediately, you're likely in one of two groups. You either loved or hated Black Ops 4. If you loved the game, leave a comment and let me know what your favorite part was. If you didn't like it or missed this release entirely, stick around and see if I can convince you. When this game was released, Black Ops 4 was a super controversial game. Number one, because of how buggy it was at launch, and two, because while it may have been a return to boots on the ground, it was set in a hyper-futuristic setting and was missing a campaign mode entirely. Now, the reason I liked this game so much is that it struck the perfect balance between high-skill gameplay while still providing a casual experience. This is in part due to the variety of game modes, but also the lack of strict skill-based matchmaking. The maps were colorful and interesting, and the gunplay was fantastic. For the first time in Call of Duty, weapons actually had some recoil, with consistent recoil patterns that you could learn.
Black Ops 4 will be the first game in our history to use a true predictive recoil pattern system. This allows you to constantly make micro adjustments while aiming and shooting. This means that the gameplay of each weapon is learnable. There's a path to mastery that is rewarding for new players and veterans alike.
Not to mention, for the most part, the weapons were also very balanced. The guns were diverse in how they performed, and certain weapons really catered to specific playstyles. You had some that were great for mobility, some weapons that were great at long-range fights, and some that were really good up close. Each weapon had its own unique personality, and I think that was in large part due to the fact that we hadn't been introduced to the gunsmith system yet. In Black Ops 4, we had the classic Pick 10 system, where you could really tailor your loadout to your specific playstyle. With the Pick 10 system, you could sacrifice attachments for more perks or vice versa, and one of my biggest critiques of the newer Call of Duty titles is the gunsmith. Now, I think it's a really cool idea, but unfortunately, every weapon tends to feel the same. You build the rifles to minimize recoil, to do the most damage at range, and the SMGs get kitted for mobility and fast TTK up close. In many cases, you couldn't tell the weapons apart if the weapon models were all the same. The maps in this game were solid, with Treyarch bringing their classic 3-lane style design with just enough variety to keep it interesting. I do think some of the maps could have had a little bit more space, but overall I much prefer this design philosophy over whatever safe space BS that we got in Modern Warfare 2019.
Our maps are a little bit more porous, and we want those players to have a safe place to take their time, to learn how to turn and move and then shoot, put those pieces together, and then they see someone and be like, oh, okay, now I can do this. So
by the end of the game's life cycle, with a full DLC release, we had 34 maps in this game. Now, I know that some of this content was locked behind a paywall for people that purchased the DLC pack, but midway into the game's life cycle, they made an update where as long as one person in your party had the DLC, you could play all of the maps together, helping to minimize splitting the player base. One of my favorite parts about this game is that it actually had a skill gap. Black Ops 4 kind of broke the mold a little bit, with the longest time to kill in any Call of Duty game and a brand new gameplay mechanic, manual healing.
Healing is no longer automatic. Now players manually trigger their healing process with a dedicated button, and that becomes as central to your gameplay loop as reloading the weapon after a firefight.
Now, some players liked this because it gave you more control over your gameplay decision making and how you approached fights, while others weren't a fan of having to manually heal themselves. These two elements combined with the specialist abilities created a game where you actually had to learn and improve to consistently be on top of the leaderboard and win your matches. Understanding all of the specialist abilities, how to play around them, using them to your advantage, and how to counter them was a huge factor in determining whether your team won or lost the match. Now, if you weren't a big fan of the abilities, Treyarch actually listened to the community feedback, adding in a bare bones playlist with no abilities for the people who prefer a more classic Call of Duty experience. I personally enjoyed both versions of the game, but the fact that you could choose your preferred playstyle really shows how much Treyarch cares about their game and their fans. During the game's life cycle, the studio head David Vonderhaar was actively tweeting, communicating, and responding to players about things in the game on Twitter. They also did seasonal briefings where Vonderhaar and other members of the dev team would talk about changes coming in the new season, explain design choices the team made, and walk us through new content like multiplayer maps.
All right, so what about the gameplay?
And this is really interesting to us because we really leaned into verticality and this sense of owning the roofs. One team is going to spawn on the roofs themselves, and we've actually never done this, is one team will spawn higher than the other, and they have an advantage, and that's the point of the map, is you need to go and try to own that roof.
Up next, we're going to talk about one of the biggest game modes in Call of Duty history, but before we do that, if you're one of the rare souls out there that has Black Ops 4 on PC, I'm trying to put together a group of people to either fill out public lobbies or do private matches. And if we get enough players together, I would love to launch a private match in Blackout. Join the Discord, the link will be in the description down below. Now, a large part of the reason I have a special place in my heart for Black Ops 4 is because it brought us the best battle royale ever.
Blackout.
The game was just built for fun in so many different ways. The map was colorful and interesting. We had a traditional battle royale loot system with weapons, attachments, and healing items and lootable perks. You could also find useful equipment around the map like a sensor dart, a trophy system, or a grapple hook. The sensor dart gave you a mini UAV wherever you placed it. The grapple hook gave you 5 grapples to help close the distance on a target, get away quickly, or reposition to high ground. And the grapple hook also helped you take advantage of the built-in wingsuit that would deploy if you fell from a certain height. All of these gameplay mechanics led to some really interesting plays and really made the game feel more unique. There were also side missions to unlock some of the characters and plenty of challenges specific to Blackout, so not every game was solely about winning or getting the most kills. For a game that claims to market and cater to casuals, you'd think that they would do more of this in the new games and not less. To unlock certain characters or skins, you had to find a special item in the game, and once you found the item and it was in your inventory, it would give you a mission to complete to unlock that character. Also, if you killed somebody that had that item in their inventory, you could loot that item and continue the mission. For example, if you wanted to unlock the Dempsey skin from the zombie side of Call of Duty, you had to land at the Nuketown point of interest, go to the underground bunker, find a Juggernog bottle, and when you had it in your backpack, you could open your inventory and it would give you a mission to complete. To complete this mission and unlock Dempsey, you had to kill an enemy with any grenade and then finish the match with the Juggernog bottle in your inventory. The locations in Blackout were super interesting and a ton of fun to play, and each season the map got new points of interest, weapon balances, and sometimes a completely different theme altogether. One season, Blackout got an entire lighting overhaul where the game was dark, there was fog, and the river and the water had been run red with blood. Another season, we had the dam break flooding parts of the map, making it so that you could drive boats in areas that you otherwise couldn't have before. Let's do this. Treyarch also filled out sections of Blackout with fan-favorite multiplayer maps from older games like Raid, Nuketown, and Hijacked, as well as some zombies maps like Asylum, Lighthouse, and Buried. Now, if you landed at a zombies location and killed all of the zombies, the mystery box would unlock, granting you access to rare loot and sometimes even a ray gun. The overall gameplay and map design encouraged players to move from place to place, looking for more or better loot, and it didn't punish players for moving through the game by giving campers a million hiding places. Treyarch also did something really smart that I wish Infinity Ward would do with Warzone. They gave the weapons unique stats for Blackout, completely separate from how they performed in multiplayer. This allowed them to really fine-tune the weapons for the best balance possible in both experiences. For example, just because the Maddox was great in multiplayer did not mean it would perform the same in Blackout. They also added separate camos for multiplayer, Blackout, and zombies. So if you were a big fan of, let's say, Blackout, when you went into multiplayer, people would see your camos from Blackout and know that you grinded that game mode, which adds a lot of progression and replay value to the game. Which brings me to my next point. Black Ops 4 is the last time we would see a traditional prestige system that didn't reset your level with each season. So no matter how much you played the game, you could always keep working towards that master prestige. To get to the next prestige level, you had to select the option and agree to reset all of your progress from weapons and attachments. You were then granted one prestige key that you could spend to permanently unlock one item, like your favorite weapon, for example. This system made the game better in a few ways. It gave the game a ton of replay value because you could keep grinding the ranks and keep unlocking your weapons and attachments. You also knew that if you saw somebody with a high prestige level, that they had really put in the work and earned it. The second way that this improved the game is that it created weapon variety in your matches, because not every person had the meta weapon unlocked at max level with all of the attachments, so the potential for each match to play differently was much higher compared to the new era of Call of Duty, where most players are just using the quote-unquote meta weapon that their favorite YouTuber told them to use. Now I know supply drops weren't the most popular idea in the world, but I really think the system Treyarch added in towards the end of the game's lifecycle was really solid and added an extra level of progression. Instead of opening your supply drops and rolling the dice to get 3 random items, you could save them up and trade them in for items you wanted in the game. So even if you hopped on to play the game a few times per week, you always knew that you were progressing towards something, be it the next prestige level, earning supply drops through daily challenges, or just grinding out camos in one of those 3 game modes. Nowadays, once you unlock the mastery camo, there's not much left to do. You have almost everything that's earnable, and the only thing left to do is buy store bundles. We also had a variety of awesome cosmetics that were actually earnable. For starters, dark matter in this game was fantastic. It was like a red-black plasma looking camo, and as you racked up kills during the game, it would grow spikes on it. Black Ops 4 is also the first time we were introduced to both reactive camos and what are now known as blueprints, but used to be called mastercrafts. I don't think a single game has done weapon camos anywhere near as well as Black Ops 4. There are 2 key features of these reactive camos that made them particularly cool. Number 1, you had to earn each camo on every gun by completing a specific challenge, and number 2, each reactive camo would evolve based on certain elements in the game. One camo would add more skulls as you got headshots, one camo would change colors as you went on a longer kill streak, and others would change based on getting kills on the objective. This is just another feature that adds to the overall progression and replay value of the game. Completing challenges to unlock each reactive camo on all of the weapons in-game gives you more things to work towards. In the modern Call of Duty era, progression is dramatically underrated because at the end of the day, no matter how good the gameplay is, we as humans want to just feel like we're working towards something. While I spent this entire video talking about how great this game is, there are a few things that I would change to make it even better. First of all, the fact that the Battle Royale game mode was locked behind purchasing the full game really hindered the popularity of Blackout, especially when compared to Fortnite at the time. The other change that this game really needed was crossplay. Being limited to who you could play with based on which system they had is something that really held this game back. And lastly, while Blackout did a great job of adding in more casual friendly game modes and limited time modes, I think they needed a way to get your teammates back if they died in the core experience. And while I appreciate the more hardcore experience of having one life, it often made the game punishing and difficult to play with friends of varying skill levels, and oftentimes, if your whole squad was dead except for one person, that last person alive would either just back out of the game to queue again, or full send it for high kill games. This led to a lot of games dying off pretty early, and the mid game being slow at times. Overall, I genuinely think that Black Ops 4 brought the most high-quality content and gameplay that we've seen in the Call of Duty franchise. While no game is without its faults, the good definitely outweighs the bad here. With a fantastic and rewarding multiplayer, progression systems that encourage genuine, organic player retention, and the best battle royale, Black Ops 4 is undeniably the #1 Call of Duty game that we've ever had. If you made it to the end of the video, I appreciate you. Let me know what your thoughts in the comments are down below. Consider subscribing for more FPS content. Drop a like on the video. My name is Caffrey. Have a good morning, and I'll catch you in the next video.